All right, let's talk. You ever feel like something's off in the way a man sees you, but you can't quite put your finger on it? You start questioning yourself, wondering, did I do too much? Not enough? Let me tell you something. Your value isn't about what you do, it's about what you allow. Today, I want to walk you through 5 things that quietly, almost invisibly, kill your value in front of a man. Not to shame, not to blame, just to wake up. Let's go. All right, let's talk. You ever feel like something's off in the way a man sees you, but you can't quite put your finger on it? You start questioning yourself, wondering, did I do too much? Not enough? Let me tell you something. Your value isn't about what you do, it's about what you allow. Today, I want to walk you through 5 things that quietly, almost invisibly, kill your value in front of a man. Not to shame, not to blame, just to wake up. Let's go. There's a silent shift that happens when you start doing too much. You begin reaching out more often, making the plans, checking in, asking how he's doing, keeping the conversations alive even when the energy on the other side feels off. You tell yourself you're just being kind, showing interest, being available, but underneath that is a subtle fear, a fear that if you don't keep doing, he might stop showing up. You begin to carry the connection on your back, hoping that one more thoughtful message, one more effort to connect will make him finally see your worth. But here's the truth. Every time you chase, you make it easier for him not to. And that chasing doesn't always look obvious. Sometimes it's in the way you dress things up, in the way you hold back your feelings because you don't want to come across as too emotional, too needy, too serious. You shape your words carefully so they don't push him away. You downplay what you want just to keep him comfortable. You tolerate inconsistent energy, random check-ins, late replies, because you think if you just stay cool, stay fun, stay low maintenance, he'll appreciate you more. But what actually happens is the opposite. The more you chase, the more he pulls away, not because he doesn't like you, but because he doesn't have to work for you. When a man doesn't have to invest, he doesn't build value. Value is built in effort, in consistency, in choosing. When he gets all the benefits of your emotional labor without matching it, he's not in a relationship. He's in a situation that requires nothing of him. And that's how it starts. You overgive, he underdelivers, and you call it balance. But it's not. It's a slow erosion of your self-respect. And what's worse is you start thinking it's your job to keep things going, that if you stop, everything might fall apart. But anything that falls apart when you stop overextending was never solid to begin with. It's not your role to prove you're good enough. That's not love. That's performance. When you operate from a place of proving, you attract people who like what you give, not who you are. And eventually, you get tired. Tired of always initiating, always making the effort, always trying to read signs and decode mixed messages. You begin to feel unseen, unappreciated, but you stay because you've already given so much, and you don't want it to be for nothing. That's not connection, that's depletion, and you don't deserve to shrink yourself just to be noticed. You are not someone who needs to chase attention. You are someone who deserves to be chosen without begging. Relationships that last are not built on one-sided effort. They are mutual, balanced, reciprocal, and when you stop chasing, something incredible happens. You make space, space for the right energy, space for effort that doesn't feel like a fight, space for a man who values your presence so deeply, he doesn't need to be reminded to reach out. He does it because he wants to, not because you nudged him into it, and that is where your peace begins. The truth is, when you chase, you create a dynamic that trains him to think your attention will always be there, no matter what. It lowers your standard without saying a word. It tells him he doesn't need to try harder because you'll try enough for the both of you. And that's a dangerous message to send, not just to him, but to yourself. You begin to believe that love is about constant effort, not mutual ease. You begin to think you need to be more, give more, do more to be enough. But you were already enough before you started chasing anything. There's something heavy about constantly tolerating what wears you down. You feel it in your chest, in your mood, in the way your energy starts to shift when you're around someone who drains you more than they pour into you. But instead of walking away, you stay. Instead of calling it out, you brush it off. You tell yourself it's not that serious, that it's just a rough patch, that things will change. You minimize your discomfort because you don't want to seem dramatic or difficult. And so you sit quietly with things that hurt, swallowing your feelings just to keep the peace that's not even real. That's not strength. That's self-abandonment dressed as patience. You start tolerating things in small ways, disrespectful tones, broken promises, inconsistency. Maybe he ignores your feelings or dismisses your opinions. Maybe he plays it off as a joke when you express hurt. You let it go because you don't want to be labeled emotional or overly sensitive. You try to be the cool one, the understanding one, the one who doesn't make things a big deal. But each time you overlook what you shouldn't, you chip away at your own value. You teach him that your needs are optional, that your discomfort is manageable, that your standards can be bent just enough to keep him close. It doesn't always feel obvious when it's happening. Some days you're fine, some days you're confused, but there's a constant underlying fatigue, like you're carrying something emotional that doesn't belong to you. That tiredness is a sign. It's your body and soul telling you that what you're tolerating is not aligned with your worth. But instead of confronting it, you make excuses. You blame timing, his past, your communication styles. You intellectualize the emotional weight so much that you lose sight of the truth. The truth is, love should not feel like quiet suffering. When you constantly tolerate behavior that hurts you, you don't just lose his respect, you lose your own. You begin to question yourself, to wonder if maybe you expect too much, ask for too much, feel too much, but you don't. You're just being conditioned by inconsistency to doubt your natural instincts. And once doubt settles in, it becomes even harder to draw the line. You begin to settle, not because you want less, but because you're scared that more doesn't exist. That's the trick your tolerance plays on you. It doesn't just exhaust you, it convinces you that exhaustion is normal. What you allow is what will continue. And the longer you allow behavior that makes you feel small, the harder it becomes to walk away from it. Because now there's time invested, emotion invested, memories wrapped around the very things that are hurting you. And leaving feels like failure, when in reality, staying is the slow erosion of your own self-respect. The more you tolerate, the less you're heard. The less you're heard, the more invisible you become. You wake up one day and realize you don't even recognize yourself anymore. You're just a version of yourself shaped by what someone else needed you to be. The hard truth is your value doesn't disappear because of how someone treats you. It disappears in your own eyes when you keep accepting treatment that contradicts your worth. The moment you stop tolerating what's hurting you is the moment you begin to realign with your value. But as long as you keep bending to fit into a space that doesn't respect your edges, you'll never feel whole. You'll keep shrinking to maintain a connection that doesn't even honor the full version of you. And you are not meant to live in fragments. You are meant to live in fullness. That starts when you stop calling pain loyalty and start calling it what it really is. Being too available is one of those things that sneaks up on you. You think you're just being caring, responsive, attentive. You think you're showing love. You want to be there for him when he calls, answer right away when he texts, say yes to plans even if they're last minute, keep your schedule flexible just in case he wants to see you. It all seems like the right thing to do when you care about someone. But there's a difference between love and self-abandonment, between presence and over-accessibility. When you make yourself too available, you start teaching him that your time, your energy, and your attention require no effort to earn. The reality is that people value what they have to work for, not in a game-playing way, not in manipulation, but in truth. We all value things that aren't handed to us without any effort. And when you're always there at the drop of a hat, you become predictable in a way that doesn't excite or inspire effort. You unintentionally remove the need for him to initiate, to plan, to pursue. Why would he step up when you're already doing all the stepping? You may think you're being generous, but what he sees is that he doesn't have to try. And over time, that turns into complacency, not connection. You weren't meant to be someone's emotional safety net on standby. You weren't meant to sacrifice your routines, your plans, your rest, just to stay on his radar. But when you're too available, you start compromising pieces of your identity without even realizing it. You cancel plans with friends because he finally found time. You shift your mood based on his energy. You answer calls even when you're tired, just to make sure he doesn't feel ignored. Slowly, your life becomes a response to his convenience. And the worst part is, you begin to feel like that's your role, like that's what love requires. But it doesn't. Real love respects space. It honors individuality. It doesn't expect you to drop everything every time. In fact, real connection grows when there's balance, when both people bring effort, when both protect their time and energy, and when both have full lives outside of the relationship. When you maintain your own rhythm, your own passion, your own pace, you create an energy that invites interest rather than obligation. You become someone he looks forward to connecting with, not someone he assumes will always be there regardless of how he shows up. When a man sees that you have a life of your own, that your joy doesn't revolve around his presence, that you are full on your own, he starts to understand that you are a woman of value, not because you're hard to reach, but because you're deeply rooted in your own worth. You're not waiting around. You're living. And when he calls, when he texts, when he makes plans, it's not because you're always there, but because he knows being part of your life is a privilege, not a given. That's what being less available actually does. It creates space for respect to grow. The danger in being too available is that you begin to think availability is love. You start believing that the more you show up, the more he'll care. But love isn't earned through self-sacrifice. It's sustained through mutual appreciation. And if he can't see your worth unless you're always within reach, then he's not seeing you clearly at all. A woman who honors her time, who protects her peace, who doesn't revolve around someone else's whims, that's the kind of woman who holds value effortlessly, not because she tries harder, but because she knows she doesn't have to. There's a quiet kind of heartbreak that comes from changing who you are just to keep someone around. At first, it doesn't even feel like you're changing. You're just compromising, adjusting, being flexible. You start holding back certain parts of yourself because you're not sure how he'll react. You water down your opinions so you don't sound too aggressive. You soften your boundaries so you don't come off as difficult. You begin dressing the way he likes, speaking the way he prefers, laughing at things that don't feel funny. It's all subtle, almost invisible, but it adds up. Piece by piece, you mold yourself into a version you think he'll choose. The deeper issue is, with every change you make to keep him, you lose a part of what made you valuable in the first place. You weren't meant to be agreeable all the time. You weren't designed to blend in and make others comfortable. You have your own colors, your own rhythm, your own voice, and every time you silence it, just to maintain peace, you send a message that your real self is somehow too much, too loud, too bold. That's not love. That's self-rejection in disguise. And the more you do it, the more disconnected you feel from your own identity. Eventually, you start feeling like a guest in your own life. You look at yourself and don't fully recognize the person staring back. The things you used to love, the passions you used to pursue, the standards you once held high, they begin to fade. Not because you stopped caring, but because you placed someone else's comfort above your authenticity. You shapeshifted so much that your needs started to feel like inconveniences. You stopped asking for what you truly wanted because deep down, you were afraid that if you showed all of you, he'd walk away. So instead, you gave him a version you thought he could stay with. But the truth is, the more you change to keep someone, the more they sense that you don't value yourself. And when you don't value yourself, it becomes harder for someone else to. Real attraction isn't just about chemistry or compatibility, it's about self-respect. A woman who owns who she is, who isn't afraid to be seen fully, who holds her ground even when it's uncomfortable, that's the woman who commands lasting respect. Not because she forces it, but because she doesn't shrink to earn it. And a man who is right for you will never ask you to dim your light to fit into his world. Changing yourself for love creates a hollow kind of connection. It might feel stable on the outside, but inside, you know you're performing. You're constantly monitoring your words, your reactions, your emotions, afraid that being too real will push him away, and that fear keeps you stuck. You start believing that who you are is something that needs to be edited. But the irony is, the more you perform, the more you lose the very spark that made you magnetic in the first place. Authenticity isn't just attractive, it's the foundation of any relationship that's meant to last. You don't need to prove your worth by becoming what someone else wants. The right person won't want a version of you. They'll want you, fully, unfiltered, unapologetic. And when you stop changing to keep someone, you start returning to yourself. You start rebuilding the parts you tucked away. You begin to speak without fear, dress without seeking approval, move through life with your own rhythm again. That's when your real value shines, not because you finally earned it, but because you finally remembered it was never lost. It was just buried under all the ways you tried to be chosen.